Okay, so I think we have everyone who's registered has joined the webinar now. So welcome. Today's webinar is a partner-focused webinar. It's part 1 of 3, and it's called Deep Dive, How the ExpandIT Mobile Solution Works for Field Workers. So my name is Gary Rodriguez, and I'll be presenting today. And a little bit later on, we're going to have Michael Frabata present to you as well. So as we get started, just going to give you a quick overview what to expect in the presentation today. So we're going to just go to an overview of what is ExpandIT, a little bit about the company. I'll tell you about some of the business problems that ExpandIT solves. Then Michael's going to take over. He's going to give you a live demo of our product. He will then answer some of the questions that come up, and then we'll go into the next steps. So in your Ring Central webinar box there's a section where you can ask questions. So you can message them to us directly. And then during that Q&A session, I will list off a couple of the questions. We may not have time to answer all of them, but we will answer at least probably two questions or so. So we're going to allot a few minutes towards the end to answer that before we conclude the webinar. So a bit about ExpandIT. So ExpandIT has over 20 years of experience as a Microsoft ISV. Our product has a standard integration to Microsoft Dynamics, NAV, Business Central, as well as F&O. We have over 4,000 customers and 50,000 daily mobile users, and our team consists of experts in mobile field service. So we really consider ourselves to be expert consultants in the mobile field service space. We also have a European team and a local North American team to handle sales, support, as well as services delivery. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the business problems that ExpandIT solves. So one of the first things that our mobile field service solution solves is it improves communications. That means it makes it easier for workers who are out in the field to be able to talk to the office, the dispatchers and planners that are sending them out. Having a web-based solution to allow both parties to communicate improves things significantly for both parties. Another major benefit is ExpandIT is scalable, so it's very easy to add new workers as your workforce grows and as the company grows. ExpandIT helps to reduce billing errors and inventory errors by having everything connected directly with the ERP system. Invoicing is improved as well. Invoices can be sent right after a job is complete, removing any of the unnecessary paperwork and time that it takes to create an invoice manually. It's also easier for compliance. With the ExpandIT solution, forms and reports can be done digitally to keep mandatory records such as safety compliance done correctly. And customer experience is also improved. End customers, their overall experience is improved by having a digital solution which keeps track of everything precisely for them. It's also helpful for them to be able to communicate with the main office to see when their technician is showing up. Overall improves the happiness that customers can experience. And finally, the last major point is profitability. By reducing wasted time, being able to schedule more jobs, and also improve first-time fix rates, meaning that when a technician goes out or a field service worker goes out to a job, they will have the right tools and the right information to get the job done right the first time. So there's no need to come back for a second visit with different tools or a different person to complete the job. So now that we've got just kind of a brief overview of what are the benefits and business problems that ExpandIT solves, I'm going to hand things over now to Michael, who's going to go into a demo of our product.
Okay, so I'm just sharing my screen for it to come across to everybody now. And today's focus is going to be on the actual mobile client itself. It will not be focusing on the planning side or the ERP integration side or any of the other pieces. It'll be specifically focused on just the mobile client and usage from the mobile client. Okay, so my screen should come up at some point, and so Gary will confirm so we can see the screen. So a few notes on the application itself. So the application is a progressive web app, which means that it runs online and offline through HTML5 capabilities on any OS. It also has a responsive design. So based off of the screen width, this application will change its size to fit the device in question. So we're going to look at just a quick representation of what that will look like. Your users would come here, they would log in. And once logged in, they would have what applications are available. We're not going to focus on the offline capabilities of a client today. The offline capabilities are the same as the online capabilities. The offline client, which is the same client, there's an additional button if it's enabled here to enable offline operations. Once it's enabled, the mobile client can fall offline and come back online seamlessly without them knowing. The system can be set up to constantly push or pull data on a timed basis, say every few minutes or every 15, 20 minutes. However, if it falls off while it's working and comes back on while it's working, it'll do the push and pull of data for that order that it's being worked on immediately. Okay, a few more notes just on so that we're all on the same page of terminology. Irregardless of the back-end ERP system, what we'll be working against is what we refer to as a work order. So that work order could be against Business Central for a service order or a job, or F&O for a project or a service order. So that it's a document type from different ERP systems, and those are just two of them as examples. And what you do is you have those orders, and you are doing work against a work order. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a service order. It could be anything that you're out in the field trying to capture data against. So let's go ahead and open up the client. And the very first thing you're going to see when we open up this client is you're going to see a lot of data flow up across the screens. And you're going to notice it looks almost siloed. So over here on the top left, you'll see it say planning, and then job, tasks, time. And you'll notice that they're siloed. And that's on purpose. So I'm on a computer screen right now. It's a very wide screen, so it can show multiple silos. But what does it look like, say, if we were to emulate a device? So we're going to emulate an iPad. And currently we're emulating an iPad tilted sideways. And if it's tilted sideways, it has enough screen real estate in its eyes to view two tabs at once. So the planning and job tab. And those tabs are also visible across the bottom. So across the bottom, you can see the individual tabs, and you can click them. If I were to rotate this vertically, it's going to think I have enough room to display one tab. Again, I can see I'm planning, I can see this information, and down at the bottom, since it's off my screen a little bit now, I can see that the tabs are available. But this is the emulation of an iPad. Originally, I was going to run the demonstration within the iPad emulator because it gives a good feeling of the screen size. But there are a couple of issues with the iPad emulators, just in general, that don't exist on the real iPads. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out of this here in just a minute and utilize the screen, but I'm going to change the size of the screen down. And what it's going to do on your screens is it should create black space on each side, but adjust it so that you can get the feeling of what it would look like on an iPad turned sideways. So this is the concept of a responsive design. So it's also touch-centric. So it's meant to be swiped left and right. So if you want to move across these tabs, yes, you can click a tab and function from tab to tab, but you also can just grab screen in some white space and move it left to right. Also, as most modern applications have the ability to refresh individual information, you can grab in the white space, say on the Planning tab, and pull down. I might have to leave the emulator, I apologize. So we'll do that real quick and adjust the screen size now. Okay, and so I'm hoping that you see just 2 columns with black space on both sides. Okay, so you can pull down on the screen and it will update. So a few notes of what we're seeing when this happens. First off, you'll notice that the update included 3 dots here. More importantly, in the top right-hand corner, it includes 3 dots. That means it's communicating with the server. And now you'll see a cloud with a checkbox in it. That means that it has active communication with the server. So the system is constantly trying to communicate with the server and saying, are you there? Are you there? If you were to fall offline and you have offline capability enabled, this will turn orange. And when you come back online, it will turn white with a check mark inside of it. There's also some other indicators for offline, but communication with the server in general is what you're going to see. Okay, so let's talk about what the user is now going to do now that we have some of the basic navigation down and what we're seeing. So first, they can see a schedule, and they can select the way they want to see it, and it will remember, as you noticed when I logged in, it selected list week. So it will have some memory, so you can select the schedule and how you want to see it. I like this view because it shows me my week separated by day, jobs in order. That's useful for me. You could do just today, or you can look at it in more of a Outlook-based calendar view. So here is one of those, and same for week and day, also more Outlook-based views. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and look back at my list week so I can see what I have to work on this week. I can move throughout the weeks, and I can see some informational pieces. Also, you can see Cinco de Mayo was added as an informational holiday so that employees knew. They have different color coding. They have different reasons for that. You can set up through our system holidays that do or don't allow work on them. So Christmas, you're closed, and no matter what, you will not be planning on that day. So you can actually close the day, mark it as a holiday, and everybody would know that that is an expected company holiday, as an example. So you can see I have a job scheduled for tomorrow, the 8th, at 7 a.m. But I'm actually going to go ahead and take a look at this job. So I'm going to click on it or touch it if I'm on my iPad. And you'll notice now the next tab has refreshed with data. So we're going to scroll over and view this tab. This tab is going to give us some more information. Again, this is really meant to be used on these mobile devices of some type or a tablet or a laptop still. But what it can do is it can offer you driving directions. So say you're on an iPad, you could click here, it will pull up Apple Maps or your default mapping application, and it will get you directions from where you are to where you're going. Same goes for phone and email. It will use the default application on the device you are to place a phone call to the contact of where you're going. And this is what this is. This is information for what you need to do to get there. So I am going to this location. This is my contact. This is a general description of what I'm doing. If there were notes sent to you from the ERP system or the planner, they would be available under messages. If there were notes sent to you, if you have a portal integration, they would come from portal messages. Okay, then that would normally come from your customer at Phil's Coffee, Mr. Coffee. On the right-hand side, you can see tasks. You can have one or more tasks, and these are the things that you are going to do. So I'm going to fix a printer. It's a 24 Ultra scan. So that is what I'm going to do. And there may be some additional information specific to this requirement over here. All right. The next tab is going to talk about the time that we are spending on the order, and we're going to look at that and how it's generated. The next issue is the materials that we use on the work order and how that's generated. We're going to talk about reports what they are and how they're used, and lastly, file attachments. And so you'll notice I've started no work on this. So for the most part, I can't do most things on this order. I can't enter additional comments, time, materials used. I'm not working. However, if materials have been specified for this order, I could see which ones are specified. So maybe I grab them in the morning. So I could click through my orders, I could see what materials I need, I could load them on my truck and get out the door. I also can view diagrams ahead of time. Maybe I need to view something. And I say diagram because that's what I attached. You'll notice this is uploaded by the office when I created this order as the sample. However, it could be anything. It could be driving directions, instructions into a building. It could be a wiring diagram. It could be a floor layout for installations. So it could be anything. It's just a way to send a document out to the mobile device. And we'll come back and look at these as we move through. So we're going to go back to the job tab, and we're going to say that I'm going to start travel. So as a driver, I'm going to start travel. The first thing it's going to want to know is it's going to want to know, do you want to set the order status for this order to start it? And I do, because I am starting it, and I'm going to work on it. Okay? So it's communicating. You saw the communications going up in the top right, and now we're back to this. So now you'll notice a lot of things that were grayed out before are not grayed out, such as order status is set to started. You also notice that messages now allow me to type in them. So as a technician out in the field, I may be writing something. These messages, if you're thinking about your ERP systems, are the comments that you would normally keep against the document. In terms of the portal messages, it's more of the concept of a back and forth with your end customer. So he may have written in that the printer toner exploded. You may get on site and he might not be on site with you, and you might write back, had to clean up the toner, but the floor is messed up. You might want to call your utilities guy to come clean that up. So it's more of the theory. So these are the internal comments most normally used, and then this is something that you would utilize to get something from the technician, maybe back to an invoice. Now, in a future deep dive, we're going to look at the approvals process. And so it's not as if this message to invoice will go from this mobile technician to an invoice. It means that it's going to go from here through the manager or an approver. It could go back and be looked at by your billing people. The premise here is to give them the option. Now, one thing we didn't talk about is the capability of turning most of what you see on or off. Do we show messages, message to invoice or portal messages? A lot of these are settings. So there's settings available on a per client basis, and they're fairly straightforward to set. So we are now on site. We've traveled, and while I was traveling, you'll notice if I come over to my time tab that I have logged in. This is me logged in, and I have a 10-minute timer set. And this, what looks like a little clock or a pizza with a missing slice on it, means that a timer is this timeline is being managed by a timer. So the timer is managing this line. And that's what that means. So it's 10 minutes, it's being managed by a timer. Why is it 10 minutes? We haven't spent 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes because we have a rounding variable. And for our demonstration, I set that variable to 10 minutes. So your company could set it to 1 minute if they're down to the minute. They could set it to 15 minutes, whatever their requirement is. So my working, we can set the work types that are utilized for driving separate from the work types utilized for working. So in this case, they're going to be the same, but I am going to go ahead and say that I am now working on this order. So I've arrived and I'm working. You'll notice I was travel started. So it's going to ask me, do I want to change the status of the actual tasks now to in process? Because I am on site saying that I'm working. And I'm going to say, yes, I do, because I am service in process for this task. If you have more than one task, it can do that for all tasks, or you can hit cancel and you can set it on each task as you work. In this case, I've asked it to do it for me. Toner exploded, cleaned printer. Okay, message invoice, helping clean. Okay, maybe that's what the technician wants to say back to the person. Maybe it ended up giving them a little less of a discount. So as I move across, there could be some other things that I could write in here. I might take note that this printer is so I might note that the printer page count is within 10% of expected failure. Maybe I expect replacement soon, right? So this might be a note that I can tell while I'm on site that this printer is nearing failure. You'll notice now on the time tab that I have a second timer now going. And here's my original driving timer, and here's my working timer. And again, this will count as I'm moving on and moving along. So down below, I can also add time. So why can you add time or add other? And the work types and the data that's below here and the data that's above here that's being specified is all being driven by your ERP system. So these aren't ours, and you can have whatever your customers or you yourself have that you're going to utilize. So I can add additional time because it might not just be for myself. So yes, I can utilize timers, and they're not a requirement, but I can utilize them to keep track of drive time and work time, just as people click through the application. But I also might want to keep track of, say, a welding rig or a specialized cart, printer cart, that has to be loaned out, and maybe I track usage for. I may charge for it, I may not, but I might want to track usage for costing reasons. So time can also be against any type of resource, whether it's person or machine, and you can select those additional resources and you can enter time. So Austin Morris, my manager, he showed up and he came out and worked 10 minutes while he was on site. Now, he doesn't utilize this application. So when he is on site, because he's salary, but maybe we're charging because he worked, so I would add him in to here. So you can accomplish different business processes for different customers based off their needs. Again, it could be a machine, it could be miles, it could be hours. Say if you're tracking, say, a forklift resource, any of those types of pieces can be put in here. And then, of course, you can always just track yourself. Okay, and you'll notice that it identifies who you're looking at based off of who's selected above. All right, so now that we understand that we can track time, we can track timers, let's come over and talk about the materials used. So the materials used will allow us to come in and search, and while searching, I may say I need to add a box of this item to fix some kind of imaging piece on this printer. And so I can add that, and I can see it above. If there were predefined lines from your ERP system, they also would be available. And there would be a light box right here. You would click it, you could see what the predefined lines are and add them directly from there. However, you're still going to be required to add them. Even if you predefine, say, for an oil change, that they're expected to use 5 quarts of oil and they're expected to use a new oil filter, they may end up using 6 quarts or 4 quarts. So we expect people to actually accurately identify what they're using out in the field. We're also not limiting this to a specific warehouse's inventory. So you'll notice at the top, it's defaulted us to our default warehouse, which is silver, which might be my truck. My truck might be the silver warehouse. However, I can change this and say, well, this morning I actually picked something up from the white warehouse. And so I picked one of these up. Again, it's not going to do the check to see if this item is in the warehouse. We're expecting your users to either have left it to the default, which is normally their truck or default warehouse location, or that they're selecting a correct warehouse if they're getting it from somewhere else. You can think of this as John shows up to give Bob a part off of his truck, if you've allowed them to see each other's trucks, then I can select John's truck and say, I now have this. So it does help with some of the back end. However, we don't want to stop people from utilizing inventory no matter where it is on the mobile client. Because at 3 a.m., when your technician is out in the field working and he needs to utilize a part, the answer is that they are going to utilize that part. And where it comes from, even if your ERP system thinks it's not in a specific warehouse, will not matter to them. So what does happen in this case is, and we'll look at this in the future, deep dives, it comes back to the ERP system and it's handled as an issue there. However, your technician can work through it and continue. So I've gone ahead and I've added some parts. So what if I went and purchased some parts? So as part of fixing this, I also had to fix the printer door, which is broken. And what did I have to purchase? Well, I just used some duct tape because that's what I used to fix the door to hold it up. But I didn't have any, so I had to go buy it. Now you have to start getting into what are you charging for it and what are you costing it at? And maybe your technician doesn't know the price that will be charged for it, or maybe he does. Maybe you have a formula that your technicians have as a business rule, but it probably cost him $4.50 for the roll, and maybe you charge a customer a delivery fee, on anything that you buy. So you could do it this way. How do these flow back to the ERP systems? There's different ways. It can go against items or products. It can go against GL accounts. So we work with different customers for different workflows. By default, we have the ability to just send it in as an item. However, that can be changed based off of need. So we're going to go ahead and add a roll of duct tape also. So next, we've worked on it. Maybe we did this ahead of time. Maybe we are doing this while we're working on it, or maybe we do it at the end. So you'll notice that there's a listing of reports here. No reports found that are ongoing. However, I can create new reports. You'll notice there's an asterisk next to work summary. That means that is a required report. That means to finish this service order, I must finish this report. But I'm not going to finish it here because I want to demonstrate how this could force people to do it and not just overlook it, and how that will look through the mobile client. However, let's say that they are expected to fill out an inspection sample as part of this, even though it's not required. So let's look at a report. A report is the premise of selecting and getting information back in. And we're going to have another future deep dive into the report builder and how to build a report. But the overall goal of a report builder, again, is to take information from the technician in the field, not in a specific format. So as an example, if you have a government form that has to look a very specific way, the goal is to gather all the information for that form. However, that form can later be printed as a PDF and made to look exactly like the original government form. However, they don't need to utilize the government format to accept the data. We also can display things in a report. So as an example, on this report, I have displayed the service items that we are going out to work on. And you can see I'm working on this ultra scan. And then I can create these separators and create questions. So all of this is done within that report builder that we'll visit in the future. And I can accept all kinds of different inputs, such as a dropdown. And this dropdown only has one option. It's yes. So have I checked for wiring shorts, short circuits? I have. What is the meter reading? So printer might be in hours, or you might have a meter reading in pages. So I'll just say 520. So quote a price on sales information. You may ask for additional information, such as, hey, if there was discrepancy, did you already quote it? If not, do they want to quote? You may ask for these things. So I'm just going to go ahead and say no to both. And then, have there been any changes? So there are some specific questions then you could get into, and these might not apply. And so you might say not relevant. Maybe you have a single checklist that gets you through multiple types of inspections. And maybe you have one individual for each different type. And different companies will do that different ways. So here you can see explanation of no for any of the questions above. So we're going to go ahead and just say not all relevant, okay? Who performed this inspection? The technician did, or somebody. I'm going to say John Doe. Oh, I'm sorry, who was the customer is what I meant to say here, not who performed the inspection. So here's the customer indicating that the inspection has occurred, and that's the expectation here. So the customer was John Doe. He can sign it. As an example of some of the other inputs capable, one of them would be to add a file. What kind of file might you add? You might add a picture of what's been happening. You could add a, say you have a customer who requires a physical signature be taken as opposed to a digital. He could sign a piece of paper and you could take a picture of it with the details of this. So there's different concepts of how this works. Other things that can happen on reports are you can come up here and select this mail icon, and it's going to ask you, who do you want this report once it's generated as a PDF to be mailed to? Again, the PDF version might look totally different with this input put into it. It'll have a company header. It could have company header information. It could have order header information, all kinds of different pieces. So who's going to get it? Well, by default, it's going to populate the contact for this work order. However, it could be him. It could be an additional, say his boss. It could be anybody. So you can add one or more here. You can delete them and add none. But this is a way to request an email to be sent from the server once a report is finished. So I have finished this report, and I just want to go ahead and click OK. So I've clicked OK. What I haven't done is I forgot to ask for that report that I just filled out, which I can click in to be emailed. So I could click in it and select email again, or I can actually request that email directly from here. So I can click here and do the same request for email to be sent. I also, since I'm still working on the order, can always open this and say I checked for wiring shorts, or maybe I misentered my reading, and I can change this value. Okay. So again, what we are not going to work on at the moment is the required report. We're going to come back to that. On the right now, you're going to see that I can look at information, or files, I should say, added by the backend system, whether it came from the ERP or from the planner. I can view those. And so here is that actual picture. I can download it, so pull it directly to the device I'm on, and close this, and I could attach my own. If I'm on a mobile device that has a camera, when I hit add file, it's going to ask me, do you want to use your camera, or do you want to use or look in your camera roll, or do you want to look at your files on the system? So that's device specific how that will work, but on this portion, since it's coming from a desktop, I can come in here and I can select another file and say okay. Good news here is I can comment to what this is. Maybe I changed something and I revised it, and I'm going to upload a new copy of it. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And now you can see that I have uploaded a new copy, and that's going to be available and flow back also for historical purposes. So now as somebody out in the field, I have performed some type of work. I have, in this case, it was a repair, and I worked on repairing a printer. I captured time, I captured materials, and we'll go back and see our time has now switched over to 20 minutes because we've been working longer than 10 minutes. So I've captured time, I've captured materials, I've captured some reports, I've captured some images, and I'm probably done. So what we're going to do is come back over here now and say I'm done or finish. When I click finish, it's going to say, do you want to set the status of it to finished? And I can say okay. And do I want to set the status of the order to awaiting approval? Again, I can say okay. Now you'll notice I cannot finalize this job because I have reports that must be filled out. So down below under mandatory reports, you'll notice it highlights this one report as being required to be filled out. So simply I can come here, and this report only takes my signature. So I can go ahead and fill that out. I can now finalize this order. And I can view the details of the order as I see fit below. I can see what I've added in terms of material. I can see the time that was spent on the report. I can see these pieces. Let's say, however, that this order was actually not completed. Let's say that I had to order a part. Let's say I didn't have the toner and I had to order it. I call back to the office. I say, hey, I need to order this part. What's the time frame for it to come in? Maybe I call the company directly and order it. Different business processes would dictate that. However, maybe I'm on site with the customer and I want to schedule that I'll come back later. So in other words, now it's not completed. It's asking if I want to change the status to partly serviced, and I'll say okay. So now I could say, hey, I know I'll have the part tomorrow by 8 a.m. Do you want me to come back and fix it? I could do that. I could say for me. I also could say not for me. I could say for another technician, or I could say for no technician. And then it's up to the planner to see that there is going to be a required planning. And we're going to get into that when we look at the planning side in the future deep dive. So for the purpose of this, I am going to say that I'm completed. And it's going to ask me if I want to set it to finished again, since it set it then to partly serviced. And I'm going to go ahead and say finalize. Once finalized, the mobile technician has no way to transact against this. So finalized for an order or a work order does not mean that something is completed. It doesn't mean that it's closed. I could have completed my task to go out and fix the transmission of a forklift. Jim still has a task to go out and put new hubs on the end of the axles for the forklift. So I could be completed, mark it completed. However, the overall order status would not be completed because there are other entries out there for work to be done for it. So at this point, though, I won't even see it in my schedule because it is completed. I still see the historical version of it up. However, once I click off of it, I cannot get back the historical version of that data. It now resides on the server and can be seen by the planners, the approvers, and sent back to the ERP system. So that's the basic workflow of the mobile client. That's the basic workflow of how a mobile client would transact against a work order. It does not matter what type of document it came out against it. You're still going to have something that you are doing work against. And really the premise of this is to capture time and materials against something, an installation, a service order, a visit for sales call, and maybe taking an order. It's any of those types of things. From here, we're going to talk about some of the ancillary uses and how the client also interacts with the application for other uses. So let's talk about non-billable time to start with. As a user, I may have non-billable time for, say, a truck inspection. The expectation is that you would have a standard internal order that is used to track that, whether it's what we call projects, which depending on the system you're using is either a project or a job, or whether it's a service order or some other type of order. We're expecting you to have some type of internal order to track that against. So they would select that order, and they would select a task, if there is one, that they're working against. They can enter the time that they were working against it, and they were tracking materials. It depends on what they're doing and what you're expecting out of them. The basic premise of the non-billable work is that you're normally tracking time. Maybe you need an attachment for something that they completed internally. They're able to come over here and comment on what their time was spent doing. And we're just going to go ahead and enter, 1 hour of non-billable time. And I'm going to say finalize. At which point in time, I am now completed an hour of time of what I consider to be a non-billable task. Okay. So I can enter some of my time in for what I'm doing throughout the day. I can enter some of my time through work orders, and that can be captured through timers. I can view the work that I have done. So here you can see the work that I have completed. And so over the course of the week, I understand the numbers seem a little crazy right now. I'm not quite sure why, but I've completed 7.69 or 7.70, really rounded hours of work. I can see that none of it has been approved. It's all pending approval. And down below, I can see that I have done work on these pieces down below. And these pieces down below will tell me what orders I've worked on in this week time frame, how much time I logged against it. I can view it by day. So you can see today, this is the work that we've just completed. And then you can see also that today I can look at yesterday and see work completed against other orders. So it's on a per day basis, and I can see if it has or has not been approved. When we go over the approvals module, you'll also see that the approver has the ability to change things. So a user did not clock into a job when he started work because he forgot. So he calls the approver and says, hey, I did not clock in today. When I started a half an hour ago. So when the order comes in to the approver changes the total amount of time. It will indicate to the user that a time entry has been changed by the approver here. So not just that it's been approved, but that the time entry was changed. So it's a good way for your technicians to be able to keep track of what they're doing out in the field and the time that they've spent and the time that's been approved or adjusted based off of their usage of the application. Up above, the week sheets, they also can fill out reports. Reports here are reports that are utilized against, not against, a service order. So you may need to fill out a report, say for an incident, a vehicle accident, or you may need users to fill out some I-9 information if they're in, day contractors. So this is an example of, this is not order specific, this is, or service specific, this is non-specific to an order, but something that may be filled out daily. You can require a report to be filled out when you start work or when you end work. By clocking in and clocking out, you could require, say, a vehicle inspection when you clock in before you can work on jobs. And a vehicle inspection is a great example of a report that's not order specific. Next, we're going to talk about messages. So if we come back to the overview, one thing that you might have noticed is this blinking message in the top, and it just went to a full-size message. I can click here to view the message, but I also can find them in the messages. Messages are sent from the planner to the mobile user. So let's take a look at what this message may be. It will indicate when you have a new message, and you can see this is a new message. It's starred and it's bold, and we're going to see that change as we read it. So this is a sample for me to say something to myself. So I'm telling myself I should do this. Where do we see these used? Well, we've actually seen an increase in usage of messages with the rise of the COVID-19 pandemic, because they need to alert their user bases of new policies for the company, areas where they may or may not be working. So there's different requirements to alert them. And we know if they've read it or not, at least if they've pulled it up on their screen, we know that. So we track the actual read, as I'll call it, because I can't say if they've read the text of it, but they've pulled it up and it's been afforded them the opportunity to understand what's being said. Other ways that messages are utilized is when the approver changes your timesheet, it automatically generates a message to the user to say, this was changed, this was the justification given. So if you are in an area that has union rules that you must justify or identify any changed timesheet, you're covered by utilizing this application. Okay. Lastly, I want to focus on history and the concept of history for these ancillary pieces. So I've created this history example. So there are 3 ways to find history. The first way to find history is to load a job and you have a history button here. The second way is to look at the history button here. If you have more than one task, then this history button is going to pull up the history and it's going to pre-filter it based off of the customer and the location that you're doing service. If it only has one task, it's going to filter it based off of the customer, the location, and the item. This button is going to limit the history down to this specific item. So in this case, because there's only one task, these buttons are the same. So we're going to go ahead and click this one. And you're going to notice it presets history for the customer, the location, and the item that we're out taking service on. I can clear those filters to get a broader scope of history for any given item, but we're going to stick with this for now. I can see work that has been completed when it was done. I can see what was actually worked on those dates and times. I can see if there were comments entered. I can see reports that had been previously filled out, and I can see materials that were added to those orders and what they were added for. So it's the capability of me being able to come in here and see a history of maybe who came out and serviced this item last. What did they do to this item last? What were the comments made? What were the items added? Was it recently that we added a new #1 piece? Yes, it was recent, February 2018. Maybe that's recent for this item. So I can see those pieces here. For a technician or someone going out to visit somebody, this is useful if they're going through their orders and they want to do a little bit of ahead of time research on what the issue could be, if they have an idea that maybe another technician went. They also can view history, say they get a call. And I can take a call maybe from somebody who calls me and says, I need you to come look at this. Well, I can come here to history. It does not pre-filter. I can come in here. I can select some information about the customer that I want to search for. And I can view the history for a customer, their location, a specific item maybe that we sold to them, or a service item. And so I can set these filters and view that history here. Lastly, and we're gonna not go too deeply into the overall process, but a technician, what we've talked about so far is working on orders that have been scheduled to him, work orders in some way. But he also by default has the capability of creating an order. The creation of that order can be accomplished through this plus sign or through the create new job function over here on the left. He can do it by, say, knowing the serial number of an item he's servicing or a product, or he can select a customer. So in this case, we're going to select a customer. At which point in time, we're going to say, what are we actually servicing, or where are we servicing first? And then we're going to say, what are we servicing? So I may know about an existing, and this should work the same way in the premise of your ERP system. I can select what it is I'm servicing. I can select a product I'm servicing against, or I can enter just a description. Maybe it's a competitor product that I've been called out to service. Okay. I can then see some information about this. I can go ahead and say whatever I've entered. I need to write in, what I need to do for it. I can select some basic information about this. I can enter a customer PO if I have one. I could schedule it for the future. If I'm, say, taking a phone call for that customer and I say I'll be there tomorrow, I could pre-plan this and create it directly from the mobile device. In this case, that is what I'll do. I'll say I'm going to be there tomorrow at noon. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. I can review all of the details that I just took, make sure that they are what I expect, and I'm going to hit done. I now have created an order for tomorrow at noon. Job's been created, and I can go back to my overview. And so tomorrow at noon, I'll see this new order created for myself on the left-hand side, right here. So your technician has the ability to create these orders. It doesn't just account for service. You can also create a new work order against the job, and you can select that job and that task. It just has to be configured to do this. However, that is available if that's what you want people to create orders against. Again, it depends on what you're allowing your technicians to transact against. Okay, so this is what we're going to, this is the demonstration for the mobile details. We have about 10 minutes for questions and answers, maybe 5. And so, Gary, do we have questions available?
Yep. So we have a few different questions here. So I think we won't have time to go through all of them. So first off, are you able to build out a route based on orders for the day?
Okay, so that question is, the answer is yes. We'll review route planning and route optimization for the planners. If you're a technician, it's simply you adjusting the order times if that's what you want to do. Planners might not, in some instances, plan the user, but if I click on this, they might plan all of my orders to 7 a.m. and allow me to decide the best path, in which case in the morning I could say, actually, no, I'll be there at 10 a.m. tomorrow for this order, at which point in time this would move to the planner on the board. So planners would normally build out best routes, but if you want to leave it to the technicians, they can adjust them once they have them planned to them. So I hope that answers that question. What's the next question?
So this one may have been partially answered here. So where would you track a machine's hour meter?
Okay, so an hour meter is something specific. So there's no default fields that would necessarily have an hour meter. However, if you're doing work on a specific machine, it's probably one of the tasks. As you saw, I was taking information on a printer. And so just like we can take information on a serial number or a number, a customization can be made for a customer specific requirement to capture an hour meter reading for that specific task, which is in turn what you are servicing a machine. It might not be an hour meter. It could be a mileage count, hour meter. It would depend on what you're trying to track. Okay.
Okay, and we'll just do one final question here. So if a part is not in my van or in the main warehouse, how can I requisition one, and how fast is that process?
Okay, so again, we're not tracking if it is or isn't by default. Yes, we've done things like that before where we're worried about a part being in a warehouse, but by default, we're not tracking that. So the technician would say, I don't know it. At this point, it's really very, very dependent on the company's business processes. Some companies will have us order a part through our application, mark it as incomplete. Maybe they know how long the parts come in, the technicians, and maybe they don't. So if they do, they may mark it incomplete with a future scheduled time frame, or they may mark it incomplete with no future time frame. And that part would go back. It would be seen as a deficiency for the order and not available in stock. And you can run some, depending on the ERP system, you can run some processes to see what you now are required to order. So in terms of how fast is the process? Well, it's as fast as the process is for any ordering of parts, which has nothing to do with us. The process in terms of the company itself, if it's a phone call, that part might be ordered right away. If it's asking for it through this, then it's as quick as it is for them to finish the order from here and move on, and for an approver to send it back. That could be 5 minutes, and it could be a day if they do it once a day. So the company itself will dictate how often they review these orders and what they review within the orders. So I hope that answered the question on that.
Yeah. So we'll just move on now back to the slides here, and I think what we can do is reach out directly to the people who have asked questions to answer any of the remaining ones. And I'm also going to give you our contact information. So I'm going to take over the screen here, Mike. So just to wrap up our presentation for today, this is a contact information for myself and for Luke. So if you have any further questions, you can reach out to us directly, and then we can set up a call if you'd like with one of our technical team, such as Michael Forbata, to answer anything specific that you have. I know there were a few other questions. And to answer one of the other questions, this recording is going to be saved, and we're going to send you a copy by email. We'll send you the link by email so you can share it with the rest of your team or refer back to it later. And so that's really the conclusion of this webinar. But next week at the same time, we're going to have part 2 of this series. And so that one is called Deep Dive, how the ExpandIT Planning Board works for planners and dispatchers. So it's going to be in the same format, same time, same length as well. So we look forward to seeing you there next week. And thanks again, everyone, for attending today.